Now, I've been accused of mysticism. And worse. But my image of the concrescence that culture is moving toward is something like this. It is the discovery of a principle or an attitude or a drug or a device. It doesn't really matter which. You can choose the metaphor that you like. A principle, an attitude, a drug, or a machine. But what's important is what it does. And what it will do is transmit information into the future. Send information into the future. And when I first imagined this device, most people I think would put themselves, would ask themselves, what would it be like at the other end where this information appears in the future? But what I wanted to imagine was, what would it look like in this laboratory when the first message was successfully transmitted to the future? Let's not call it a message, let's call it a person for the sake of imagery. So what would happen in this laboratory as the first time traveler is sailed off into the future? Well, now at first I thought that what would happen would be that suddenly all over the world time machines would appear, piloted by people from the future who had come to see the first time travel. Are you with me on this? But it tugged at my mind that there was something wrong with this, because, you know, when you talk about time travel, you must never have what's called the grandfather paradox. This is, if I go back in time and shoot my own grandfather, then I won't exist, so how could I shoot my own grandfather? And in any situation where this happens, you're in trouble. So the grandfather paradox would exist in that situation where time travelers suddenly appeared at the first time travel experiment from the future. So then I had a different notion, slightly, I hope, more profound, and it is this, that if a technology were to be invented that could send something or person into the future, and if in the process of inventing this thing it were discovered that you cannot send you can send a time machine forward in time, you can send it backwards in time, but you can never send a time machine further back in time than the invention of the first time machine. Why? Because before that, time machines didn't exist. That would explain why we don't see time machines. So I choose to believe, and will now attempt to convince you, that this is in fact the kind of universe that we are living in, and that what our technology is pushing toward is the invention of some kind of something which in real plain talk is a time machine. In slightly less plain talk, what is happening is that this concrescence, this singularity, this knitting together of everything is approaching the point where it can no longer be any more knitted together unless it expands into the future. You follow? In other words, it's becoming so complexified that it's requiring another dimension for its own self-description. and the only dimension available to it is the future, and so it's beginning to move into this other dimension, and we, standing in the microcosm looking at this process, say, oh, someone has invented a time machine, but this is how it would work. What's interesting about this idea is that if such a thing were to be created by any means, the effect would be to cause the entire rest of the future to happen almost instantly. In other words, like heat distributing itself through a gas, the most advanced states that can possibly exist in the future lie just on the other side of this technological barrier of sending a person or thing into the future, because the most advanced state flows back through the system and converts all pre-existing states to itself. So this is, to me, very interesting. It means, in a way, that we can toil toward a kind of psychotechnological switch which, if thrown, emerges us in Bodhi mind, emerges us in the highest hypostatization available to the religions of our planet, the white light, the Bodhi mind, whatever you care to style it. It actually may exist ahead of us in the historical continuum. And of course, as in quantum physics, where particles can penetrate energy barriers and appear on the other side without actually having attained energy sufficient to go over the barrier, this is called virtual tunneling, information can make its way into the past, even our past, to a very slight degree. This is what has created these psychedelic visions, these religious hierophanies. They are the products of advanced human personalities, holy men and women, staring at their minds in states of deep contemplation and anticipating the destiny of the human race, the destiny of biology on this planet. And I think that we are very close to being able to cross through the membrane and realize this eschatological possibility, to cross into a new ontos of being, the ontos of being that has called us forth across the millennia, out of the scattered jarring of the atoms into organic existence, up through the cultural experience, across the horrific leap of history, and into authentic meaning. This is what the shamans have been seeing for thousands and thousands of years. This is what the ecstatics have anticipated. This is what the great religions, however poorly, have attempted to communicate to the mass of humankind. This is our hope. It's our birthright. It's our destiny. And in my opinion, it is soon, for very good reasons, the reasons I have laid out tonight. We are to be, believe it or not, witness, I think, to the final act of the planetary drama of intelligence in 3 dimensions. Hard to believe, isn't it? I find it hard to believe. How lucky can you get? There's an Irish prayer which is, and I think I'll end the speech with this, and then we'll take an intermission and come back for questions. But there's an Irish toast or prayer which is, "May you be alive at the end of the world." And so I make that toast to you. I believe we are alive at the end of the world, and it's a wonderful world. Thank you. Thank you.